Don't mind repeating your question in the email.
Sure. I suppose my question in the email was I put to you what my daily sitting practice is like at the moment, and sort of invited you to give me some feedback on it. I've been reading from the Anapanasati sutta in directly from your recommendation. And I've been trying to practice, I suppose, a little bit more intuitively from that, rather than the incredibly kind of detailed, lots of things to remember approach that maybe I had been doing before. But it's a subtle difference. It doesn't feel like a complete change.
Right. Okay. Rather than having a whole lot of things to remember, we can put it down to basically kind of 4 things to remember. But some of those have their own details. And altogether, Ānāpānasati only has 16 steps.
Yeah.
And that I think that the last 4 steps of what is called anicca, or that everything is in flux. Because in fact, everything in the mind is in flux. This is one of the reasons why it's associated with air, where the mind is associated with fire, because it's got its own energy, it's got its own qualities. But we use thoughts as the content, as air, and we can begin to look at them as clouds. And sometimes our whole mind feels like it's a cloudy day. But in other days, when there's a lot of space, then we can begin to see the clouds as they float in and float by. And so this whole quality of it being a cloud or nothing much at all is just very transient. Doesn't have much of a life. Everything is anicca. Everything that comes into the mind goes out of the mind very quickly, that it keeps rolling on. Things don't stay in the mind. And also in that regard, the everything that comes into the mind kind of fades away very quickly and then dies off. The question is, can we relinquish and let go of whatever came into the mind? It arises, it dies, let it go. And so these are the last 4 of the tetrad, and we've got some ways of looking at it. But basically, Ānāpānasati is based in these 4 foundations of mindfulness. So you have the body component, the feeling component, the mental component, and then the mind's objects component. Now, when we're not doing the meditation, then the mind's objects are going to be someplace other than the object of meditation. And when we recognize that, that's sati that comes up. And it's also step 9, or the first aspect of sita. The sita is the mind, or sita nupassana is the word that's used. Sita nupassana means that we are now going to start watching the mind, and that one of the qualities then of the relinquishment of the object is also the liberation of the mind from it. And so you can see that those 2 things would be actually the same thing, but one is in mind and the other one is in the mind objects. But also when sati arises, we begin to experience the mind. The better we get at Ānāpānasati, the better we're going to experience the mind. This is a training. But the first experience that we have is not watching the breath. That's for the beginner. The mind wandered away. And so we caught it. And by catching it, we are now continuing along with this Ānāpānasati in its various stages. The next thing that we want to do is step 10 of Ānāpānasati is to gladden the mind. And there's a very, very good reason for that. And that is most likely the mind was not gladdened. It was not in a state of happiness. It was not in a state of joy. It was in a state of hindrance. That the mind almost always does not wander away into a good place. It wanders away into a ditch. Very rarely does the path lead into and through a pasture. Almost always it's lined with ditches.
Mm,
And so, most likely, when the mind wanders away, it wanders into a ditch. It wanders into a state of unwholesomeness. We need to bring it back to a state of wholesomeness.
mm,
And this is step 10 of Anapanasati, which is called gladdening the mind. And this is an important quality because even though it's step 10 on the list of 16, it still needs to be practiced very, very early.
mm,
With every breath, we can practice several of these aspects of Anapanasati. It's not so much that you have to remember a lot of things, but there are a few key points to remember.
mm.
One of them is to remember, the second one is to gladden the mind. But now we want to look at the fact that there is a relationship between the mind and the feelings.
Mm.
Just like there's
When
a
it
relationship between the body and the feelings, there's a relationship between the mind and the feelings.
when it talks about feelings, is it referring to emotional feelings or physical
All
feelings?
of them.
What's the okay?
Okay, we're talking about all of them, but we're limping it under the banner word of Vedana, which most easily translates into the word in English of feelings. But the word feeling has a broad connotation to it.
Mm,
There's many, many different kinds of feelings, and there's also different kinds of circumstances for feelings. And that in the case of the Buddha, we're actually going to expand that and even add more qualities of feeling.
okay.
But basically, it works like this: your whole life has been spent exercising and working on problem solving, fixing things, getting things done, and oftentimes with an attitude of this is work, but it's got to be done. In other words, we have full blown exercised our not liking feeling to the hilt,
Mm,
while we have left the feeling of liking almost atrophied.
mm, mm,
And so we need to start exercising that feeling muscle to feel good
mm,
rather than spending so much time feeling bad. The way that we're going to do that is with this step 10 of Anapanasati of how the mind can affect the feeling. If you start having happy thoughts, you'll begin to have happy feelings. That's how you can talk somebody out of being in a bad mood, is because you start planting in their mind good thoughts, and those good thoughts will lead to good feelings.
mm,
This is actually under the rubric of the word mudita, which means actually sympathetic vibrations.
mm,
That's what controls the crowd, is because they're all beginning to feel the same thing. That's when one person is angry, he wants other people to be angry, and other people will accommodate him.
mm,
They will get angry too.
mm,
At a funeral, the person who has the most grief will actually orchestrate a choir of grief. After hubby dies, when mom cries, everybody cries. Why is that? Because of sympathetic vibrations.
mm,
So, in that regard, the mind can have enormous feeling over the feelings of the body. For instance, I see mom cry, I think about mom crying, I begin to feel the same feeling that she does, and I start to cry with the same feelings that she has.
mm,
Sympathetic vibrations. Now that we know that, there's many, many examples. One of them is in debating, to where if you can get your opponent angry, then he'll get discombobulated. He won't be able to think straight. Probably
sure.
the most famous of that happened in chess in 1972 with Bobby Fischer, because let me think of his name. Uh, Spassky, I think, was a better chess player. He Russian. He was a better
Mm,
chess player than Bobby Fischer. But Bobby Fischer won the championship because he played psychological games better than Boris Spassky did.
mm,
He would get up and he would stand behind Boris Spassky while it was time for Boris Spassky to. He wouldn't sit in his chair and watch the table, he would get up and lurk behind Boris Baskett, just completely destroyed the man's ability to play chess.
Yeah.
Another one was that he would go out and he would start to reach and touch the piece, and then in those rules said if you touch a piece, you've got to move it. Well, of course, Bobby Fischer would go and just almost touch the piece. He would have his hand completely circled around that piece, but he didn't quite touch it. But he led everybody to the conclusion that he was going to move that piece, and then he would move something else. He would intentionally go and try to almost touch a piece that he had no intention of moving. Okay, these are psychological games that we can actually see in operation, and we can begin to put those techniques in operation for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So what does it look like then, gladdening the mind?
Gladdening the mind. One of the things that you can do is make sure that you're having wholesome thoughts, a thought of metta, but not the loser's metta, not may I be happy, but wow, I am so happy. May I be happy means someday. Wow, I am happy means right now. So part of the gladdening the mind would be when the hindrances are coming, or when we see the hindrance. Aha, I caught you. I can see you, Mr. Hindrance. That whole attitude now is beginning to change. It's a change from a loser's attitude into a winner's attitude. You begin to gladden the mind. That's going to start making the feelings change, so that you begin to feel good with good, wholesome thoughts, as opposed to feeling bad because we've been having unwholesome thoughts.
So is that also like noticing pleasure in sitting, noticing how nice it is to sit, noticing how nice it is to have stable attention, noticing how nice the breath feels? This is also kind of comes under gladdening the mind.
Yes, it does. Exactly.
Okay.
And there's one more thing that we can start looking at, and that is not only, first off, all of these things are skills to be developed. As you begin, you're not going to be as expert at it, and therefore your skill levels are going to improve with practice. The most important skill of all is the skill of sati, to remember. And ultimately, that's going to be satipanya, to remember to be wise. That's the ultimate goal. Always sati, 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 sati. In this case, sati means to remember to do the meditation. And the first thing then is to remember to gladden the mind. Wow, this is good stuff. I can do this. We developed then the attitude that I am a winner. I can do this. That's where the piti, the rapture, comes in as a feeling, the feeling of success. We begin to enjoy the meditation as opposed to being work that I'm doing in order to get a future reward. Here's the reward right now, championship. To be able to be on top of your own heap, to be the emperor of your own pile of dirt right now.
I think I do enjoy my sits a lot. The only
work
time
on that is a skill to be developed. Okay. Don't just let that happen. Make it your job to do.
Okay.
A joyful job.
The thing I probably enjoy most is the body awareness and bringing attention to the body, especially exploring it with the breath, and it becomes a very subtle awareness, and it's like a sort of liquid electricity feel as you're kind of moving your breath through the body. Is that a bit of a trap though? Okay.
I like that word, exploring.
Yeah.
The normal word in the sutras is investigation. But they're the same thing, but one of them has a better feeling quality to it. Investigation, that means, there's been some damage here. I've got to go find out. But
sounds like you're in trouble if the police are after you.
Right. But exploring, that's the way of looking at it. To explore the body, to enjoy that exploring, to know that you're a champion. to know that the practice of Ānāpānasati and the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path is the teaching of the Buddha. And the Buddha has the very highest teaching available to humanity. That you are practicing to become the cream of humanity, to have that noble mind, to become the very best, and you're becoming successful in it. That ought to give you some great joy right there. Wow, I'm doing the Buddha's work. So that's also the quality of that experience of championship. The Buddha was a lion. He was not a lamb. He was not a loser. He was a champion. He roared. He spoke the truth. And so this is a quality that we develop. And this also would be the word that I would use would be success. Now, normally the word success doesn't have a lot of power or energy behind it. That's why I use the other words like champion or emperor or lion, because these words have some weight behind them. But the real issue is the feeling of success, the feeling of completion, the feeling of having done a job done well, and you are satisfied with it.
Do you know, the thing that is most likely to stop me feeling that in my meditation is tiredness. It's when I have a sit where I start to like lose. I basically start to fall asleep. I'd say it probably happens about a fifth of my sits. I suddenly kind of get trapped in a kind of sinking hole of dullness and tiredness, and I find it quite hard to bring myself out of it. When I have sits like that, I get
with the breath. With the breath,
a bit bummed out. Okay, can you elaborate? How do you mean?
Your problem when you're getting into that state of dullness and drowsiness is possibly because you haven't been breathing correctly. So one of the ways of bringing this thing back is every time that you're coming back to practicing this feeling of satisfaction through success, that's when you want to be sure that you're taking deep breaths, almost as if the champion is the in-breath, and then the satisfaction of the win is a deep sigh, out-breath, a complete release. Something like, So start to take really deep, good breaths. That's going to help keep you out of being drowsy. And if you find yourself in a state of drowsiness, then start doing the breathing to get your body oxygenated.
Okay.
Because actually what's going on is most of the time the human being relies upon our automatic pilot. We live in a world of intuition or instinct. And we're driven by the self-preservation instinct and the procreation instinct and the nesting instinct and the territorial instinct, and we mostly live our lives in instinct. This part of the brain is in survival mode, and it doesn't really require that much energy or blood. And in fact, as the body is shutting down, getting close to death for whatever reason, the scientists have figured out that the second to the last thing to go is the heart, but the last thing to go is that part of the brain, the reptilian mind. But the frontal cortex, the one that uses up all the energy, was shut down long ago. We're in real survival mode, okay? What we need to do in meditation is to get out of survival mode. We're fully away from survival mode. We're not in danger at all. And so we want to utilize that frontal cortex. That's why breathing becomes so important, is to take those deep, long breaths to get that brain oxygenated, get that frontal cortex working so that we can put it to work, put it to good use, make it fit for work. And so this is why the breathing is so important to put along with it. So now there's only basic three things. One is the mind, to recognize that the mind has wandered away, or recognize or keep seeing, to investigate what the mind is doing, to gladden the mind, constantly gladden the mind, to keep the mind gladdened, to keep it happy, give it nice, bright things to think about. The next one is the feeling of champion, the winner, the lion, the successful one. We can do this practice. I feel good about it. The third one then would be the satisfaction that comes with having a job well done. Now, we can also equate right there with the breath, in the sense that that in-breath is the win, and the out-breath is the satisfaction. And so we work with all of these things together. Not really a whole lot to remember.
No.
But that will keep you with the mind that's focused, a mind that's sharp, and now you want to get into that state of sukha and stay there. This is, in fact, first jhana, the way that I've described it. It's got all the jhana factors. What are the jhana factors? Rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, or the piti sukha born of the seclusion. Well, in the beginning, in the meditation, we've secluded ourselves from the world. We're sitting down in a quiet room, so we're secluded that way. But here in first jhana, what we're really secluded from is our own wandering mind, the hindrances, that we're no longer letting the mind do what it wants to do. We're going to put it to work.
So that's the stability, the concentration, the kind of stability of
attention. I would never use the word concentration.
Okay.
Trying to train my students and myself out of using that word concentration, because it translates from the word samadhi, but samadhi does not mean concentration. It means, a better way of looking at it is gathering the factors together that are needed, to where concentration has the quality of only the important things are being done and everything else is being moved out. In that way, it's like this. Concentration goes in this direction of concentrating and pushing stuff out, and samadhi is gathering together.
So it shouldn't think of it so much of excluding things from the mind, rather bringing the mind to a specific place that you're intending to bring it.
Yes. And that will then have, with the freedom of the hindrances now and that seclusion, that brings the rapture and the pleasure together. The rapture is the win, the success, and the pleasure is the satisfaction of having done a good job, and now we can rest with that sigh. And so we want to start working with that quality of satisfaction, that quality in the Pali that's called sukha. Now, first off, think about sukha is exactly the opposite of the word dukkha. So dukkha nirodha is actually dukkha sukha. And the Thai people, they use it exactly that way in Thai language. This is a Buddhist country. They ought to know how to use the Pali word. So this sukha, this satisfaction, then, if you'll think about it, when we gather these factors together, this is not only first jhana, but this is also, in this moment of first jhana, freedom from suffering in this moment. Which means that the longer we can stay in this first jhana, the longer we can stay out of suffering. So this is what I would call the sweet spot. You want to stay in that state of satisfaction. This, by the way, would be then step 6 of Ānāpānasati. Step 5 is the rapture or the win, the feeling of success that changes our attitude from that of a victim of my mind into the champion of my mind. That I'm an emperor of my own pile of dirt, but I'm not half or deeply buried in that pile of dirt. I'm sitting on top of it, on top of the world. My own world. So this is the way we begin to look at it, is that we have these feelings of enormous joy, enormous gratification It can also have the quality of thankfulness.
Mm.
It has actually a quality of generosity built into it because I've got a lot. Wow, this is really good stuff. Wouldn't it be
Mm.
great if the whole world would have this good stuff? Well, now we're into metta. This is also a very good, wholesome kind of thought system to have in this state.
Mhm.
So, in this state of sukha, we want to maintain that place because now the mind is really fit for work. Part of the reason it's fit for work is because we're doing correct breathing. We're not letting the mind get dull. We're keeping it sharp, keeping it focused. And what's the purpose of this mind then? Well, the purpose now of this kind of mind is to maintain or to reestablish, if we lose it momentarily, this state of sukha.
Mm.
This is the third noble truth, that there is freedom of suffering. You can get yourself into a state of satisfaction. The question is, can you maintain that? The answer
Mm.
is yes, because I'm going to be on guard for it.
Mm.
And I'm only going to allow good, wholesome thoughts to come into the mind because unwholesome thoughts will pull me out of the state of satisfaction.
Mm.
I become
And
dissatisfied.
this is both sort of during formal meditation and then that as a practice for life in general. Is that
Precisely
correct?
so. We
Mm.
are going to take this sitting meditation, get it really good, and take it off the cushion and
Mm.
practice it over and over and over and over and over again all day long. How can I get myself into a state of satisfaction? Over and over and over again all day
So
until
is a good way into that to try and bring attention to the breath throughout the day, to kind of bring attention to the possibility of gladdening the mind throughout the day, to bring awareness to the body
I've,
throughout the day.
I've got a whole bag full of tricks that I'm going to
Okay.
teach you next time
Okay.
about how to bring that off of the cushion into the real life. We work with the hands, we work with the face, we work with a chair, we work with all kinds of things to start bringing this state of joy and rapture and satisfaction to have it happen throughout the day, like 10, 20, 30 points.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not last but a minute, but wouldn't it be nice if you had 30 1 minute sessions of absolute joy throughout the day as opposed to ordinary day?
Mm-hmm. I've been trying because from reading the sutta, you get the impression from the words in the sutta that he's not just talking about formal meditation sessions. It's clear that he's talking about a much wider
Anytime
approach.
that you can think of it.
Yeah.
Anytime that sati comes, that should be part of the process of gladdening the mind, feeling like a champion, feeling like a winner, becoming satisfied with the moment, and then intending to stay in that satisfied moment.
Sati came in a dream the other day. I was dreaming, and in the dream, I remembered to bring attention to the sensation of breath. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yes, it will begin to affect sleep also. We can
Yeah.
talk about that in great detail at a time later. But right now, we're trying to get down to how can you stop looking at your meditation practice as complicated and start
Mm,
seeing it like, oh, this is a piece of cake. This is easy stuff to do.
okay. You said a couple of times about like the right way to breathing. You said that in relation to the feeling drowsiness, and then you said it again a bit later. Do you mean when you say that the bringing the mind to the breathing, or do you mean something specific about the way you are breathing in the
Yes.
meditation?
Here's the thing. If you are breathing unconsciously,
Mm,
then the reptilian mind is in conservation.
mm-hmm,
It really is like that in political parties. You have conservatives and you have liberals. And that
mm-hmm.
basically means those who do not breathe enough and those who do. Well, what that means is those who are not breathing enough means they're stuck in reptilian brain. They're stuck
Yeah.
in not having enough, and so they feel the need to try to conserve as opposed to grow. Everything about the teaching of the Buddha is liberal in the sense of we're going to make something really nice here. We're not trying to conserve something that's worthless. We're going to make something beautiful instead. So, getting out of the reptilian brain, they have done MRIs and they have found that, or actually as fMRIs, the functional, is that when we begin to consciously breathe, thinking about the breathing, the frontal cortex begins to light up. That when we're just sitting there doing nothing and the breathing has happened naturally, then the reptilian brain is doing it and the frontal cortex goes to sleep. This happens in school. When mom or when the teacher says, Johnny, pay attention, calls it daydreaming. Basically, he's not paying attention. He's actually gone to sleep. At least half of his brain has gone to sleep. And that's the frontal cortex. How we wake that up instantly is by taking that breath. That will immediately start putting that frontal cortex to work, while also that breath, within just a few seconds, the oxygen of that breath is going to be right there in the brain to help it.
Okay, because the way I've sort of thought about this is that you're breathing meditation in a completely natural, unconscious way. The consciousness comes with the attention that you're placing on it. Should I shift that a little bit and bring a little bit more consciousness to the act of breathing rather than placing attention on it? Does that make sense as a question?
Yes, in almost in the way of taking control of it.
Okay.
Literally taking control of the breath. Now, I know that there are some meditation teachers who say don't control the breath, but they're talking about, let us say, practices that exist in the Asian countries that they're recommending to not do.
Yeah.
Okay. But in this regard, we're talking about, yes, you do want to take control of the breath. You want to take direct control of the breath, breathing consciously, breathing deeply.
I see.
Okay. And that you're going to start watching that the out breath is going to actually last a little longer than the in breath. That in fact, musicians can take a very quick, deep in breath and then play a long passage or hold a long note with a long out breath. And so that's a very natural thing to do. To take a very, the quality should be more on deep than quick.
Okay.
But you can take a deep, quick breath. Like that. That's a full breath. I can't take hardly any more air, but now that I've taken that breath, watch, I can just talk and talk and talk without having to take a new in-breath. And it just goes on like that because there's still quite enough air in the lungs, and I can continue to talk, and I still haven't taken a breath yet. And here I go, continuing right along with the trouble. And I can continue to talk with that same in-breath, but now I'm running out of air.
Breathe. So paying more attention to the depth of the breath.
Yes,
is a good idea. Okay.
Begin to start watching it, noticing it confidently, and also bringing that quality of absolute joy and pleasure into that breath. Wow, this is a really good one. Especially that first in breath after a long out breath.
What about the point at which the sort of, it's very stable? I won't say concentration. I'll try and think of a different word. The samadhi goes to Pali. The samadhi is very stable, and the breath at times like that, the breath feels like it kind of naturally shortens. Should that be avoided? Should the depth be maintained, or should the breath be allowed to?
Absolutely not. You're exactly correct. We do want to allow the breathing to go back normal. The question is, how many breaths in?
Okay.
Sometimes all you need is that one long deep in breath, and after that you can let it go back. But for beginners, I would recommend 3 to 5, and sometimes when we feel the need for it, then we can go up to maybe 7, 10 breaths. I wouldn't recommend to count more than 10 deep, long breaths because you've already got enough oxygen now, believe me.
Okay. So that's as a way to to overcome the drowsiness, and that's as a way to encourage the stability of attention, or the samadhi on the breath, is by that depth. And then once that's stable, once you're alert, and the enjoyment, of course. Okay. And once that's stable, once that there's alertness, once there's that sense of sukha, we can let go of the conscious breath a little bit and bring it back.
Yes, because now
your more natural.
Yes. But you're going to keep the breathing in the background. You're going to know that it's there with every breath. You're going to know that it's an in breath, and every breath that you take an out breath, you know that it's an out breath. But now we've got a whole lot more work to do. What's that new work to do? Well, actually, we've already talked about it, and that is to maintain that state of sukha.
For me, intuitively, or where I'm at with my practice at the moment, I would then seek to do that in the body through awareness of breath in the body.
Absolutely. That's good. But the other thing also is to make sure that whatever thoughts are in the mind are the kind of thoughts that are not going to take you out of that state of sukha. Thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, thoughts about things that you want, thoughts about work that has to be done, thoughts about tomorrow, thoughts about other places. But if you can keep your mind focused on here and now, then you've got really wholesome thoughts. So one of the kind of wholesome thoughts would be is to review some of the stuff about the Dhamma. For instance, a review of the Four Noble Truths, of recognizing in this state there is no suffering. This is good Third Noble Truth stuff. We also begin to watch how the mind works. Begin to see it in its operation. That's when Ānāpānasati starts to become paticcasamuppāda, because you're going to maintain that state of sukha, kind of irregardless of the fact that other processes are bubbling up, feelings and things like that, anxieties, fears, other kinds of things may come up as they choose. Your job is to try to maintain that state of sukha. Any unwholesome thoughts that come up, you want to chase them out and bring it back to a state of wholesome thoughts that are going to help you maintain your state of sukha.
Okay, and those are thoughts which are oriented towards the present moment, the pleasure in the present moment, and relating that to the possibility that there does not need to be suffering in the present moment.
In this present moment, no suffering. This is it.
Yeah.
And we can have thoughts like, wouldn't it be nice if everybody was feeling just this way right now?
Yeah. Or if this could be taken off the cushion and into life.
Yeah,
regularity.
One at a time. Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. So you start working at being able to get it and sit on it.
Yeah.
And then later we'll start to work on, can you get that while you're out in the daytime?
Okay. Bhikkhu Dhammarato, I'm going to have to go now.
I know. We got this chat for 40 minutes and it's 38 and a half, so you got to go. I got
it. Thanks so much for your time. You've given me a lot to I'd say to think about, to play with. That's a lot better than think about. Yeah. All right.
Okay, we'll see you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one, whatever
Thank
that
you
is.
very much.
Have a good
too.
zero.
Have a good zero. You too. Bye-bye.